The night over southern New South Wales is quiet, almost unnaturally so. Low clouds hang heavy over the rolling terrain, their undersides glowing faintly from the scattered lights of nearby towns. The twin engines of the Douglas DC-3 hum steadily, a mechanical heartbeat slicing through the darkness. Inside the cockpit, instruments flicker in weak green glow, needles trembling with every gust of wind. The crew knows the city below is shrouded in fog. Visibility is poor, and the radio crackles with sporadic updates from the airfield. Every decision matters. The altimeter ticks downward. The artificial horizon wavers subtly as turbulence rattles the A-frame. A slight misjudgment here, a moment of distraction there. The margin for error is almost invisible. Outside, the landscape rolls by, dark and featureless. Hills rise like ghosts beneath the cloud layer, hiding the airport from view. The crew scans their instruments, cross-checking altitude, heading, and speed. Their training and experience guide them, yet the environment presses in from all sides. Silence dominates a cabin between radio calls, punctuated only by engine thrum and the occasional clink of cockpit switches. Suddenly, a bank of cloud thickens, and the runway lights remain stubbornly out of sight. The tension is subtle but palpable. A precise balance between aircraft capability and human judgment is all that keeps them on course. The stage is set. This is not a crash yet. Only the fragile moment before control, environment, and decision converge toward catastrophe. The night holds its breath, and VH-UXH presses on toward Canberra, unaware that a chain of events will soon challenge every assumption about flight safety in the post-war era. The year was 1945. The Second World War had drawn to a close, but Australia's skies remained alive with the remnants of wartime aviation. Aircraft that had once ferried troops and supplies were now being repurposed for civilian use, often without the luxury of modern navigation aids. Among them was VH-UXH, a Douglas DC-3, one of the most reliable and versatile aircraft of the era. Its robust A-frame, twin radial engines, and simple systems made it a workhorse across the continent, capable of carrying passengers or cargo through challenging conditions. Yet, reliability did not make it invincible. The flight originated from Sydney, bound for Canberra, a route deceptively short but deceptively complex. In peacetime, the flight path might have been routine, but winter conditions in southern New South Wales added layers of complication: rolling hills, frequent fog, and sudden weather changes. Instrument landing systems were rudimentary, relying heavily on pilot skill, visual cues, and sporadic radio beacons. Pilots could find themselves navigating almost entirely by dead reckoning when visibility dropped. The crew of VH-UXH was experienced but not immune to the pressures of the era. Post-war aviation demanded rapid turnarounds, often with minimal rest. Pilots balanced mechanical understanding with procedural discipline, constantly aware that a single misread instrument or delayed decision could have serious consequences. Their passengers, unaware of the hazards, trusted the aircraft and its operators to deliver them safely across the unforgiving terrain. Air traffic control infrastructure was in its infancy. Communication relied on intermittent radio updates, and weather reporting was far from precise. Canberra itself, nestled amid undulating terrain, offered a visually deceptive approach. Hills and ridges could disappear beneath low clouds, and without modern approach lighting, a pilot descending into fog risked misjudging altitude or alignment. VH-UXH was operating at the intersection of skill, technology, and nature, a delicate equilibrium that demanded respect. In this environment, every flight carried inherent risk. The DC-3's design mitigated some hazards, yet it could not compensate for sudden weather shifts or lapses in situational awareness. The story of VH-UXH is as much about the broader landscape of post-war aviation as it is about a single aircraft. It is a story of humans, machines, and the relentless unpredictability of the skies. The DC-3 was a marvel of its time. Its A-frame, all-metal, and aerodynamically efficient, could handle turbulence that would unsettle smaller aircraft. Twin Pratt & Whitney radial engines provided dependable thrust, and redundant systems offered a margin of safety. Yet, the aircraft's simplicity belied its dependence on pilot judgment. Navigation was primarily visual, supported by primitive radio beacons. Instrumentation provided guidance, but no automation existed to correct human error. Every altitude adjustment, heading correction, and descent rate required deliberate calculation. The crew of VH-UXH carried experience, yet faced the same constraints that challenged all post-war aviators. Flight hours were long, rest often limited, and the cognitive load was constant. In the cockpit, the pilots divided tasks efficiently, one monitoring instruments, the other scanning the skies and terrain. Communication was concise, each instruction measured. Fatigue or distraction could tilt this delicate balance, particularly in low-visibility conditions where terrain awareness became critical. Environmental factors compounded the challenge. Southern New South Wales is known for sudden fog banks and rapidly changing weather patterns. On the night of the crash, low cloud layers obscured the horizon, leaving visual cues nearly non-existent. Hills rose unexpectedly beneath the cloud cover. Temperature and humidity created optical illusions, and the lack of modern terrain warnings meant the aircraft could be perilously close to the ground without any alert. Aircraft systems offered limited assistance. The DC-3's altimeter required careful calibration. Minor misreadings could prove critical. The artificial horizon and directional gyroscope were reliable but sensitive to turbulence and required continuous monitoring. Radios transmitted intermittent signals, and navigation by dead reckoning demanded precision. A misstep, a delayed tone, an incorrect altitude, or an unobserved drift could set the aircraft on collision course with terrain without warning. Together, these elements illustrate the complex interplay of human skill, mechanical capability, and environmental unpredictability. VH-UXH was a machine in competent hands, yet the circumstances of the flight required constant vigilance. Every factor, from cockpit layout to hilltop visibility, from fatigue to instrument interpretation, converged to create a narrow margin for error. It is within this intricate balance that the accident would soon unfold. As VH-UXH approached Canberra, the cloud cover thickened, swallowing the runway lights and erasing the horizon. The crew, trained for such conditions, relied on their instruments, altimeter, artificial horizon, and directional gyroscope to maintain safe flight. Every adjustment was deliberate, every calculation precise. Yet, the margin for error was narrowing. The aircraft descended gradually, following the approach pattern. Hills and ridges, hidden beneath a veil of fog, crept closer than the pilots could perceive visually. Turbulence from the low cloud layer caused subtle deviations in altitude and heading, almost imperceptible but cumulative. In these critical minutes, the crew's attention oscillated between instrument readings and scanned external cues. Radio communications were sparse, providing minimal situational updates. The DC-3's altimeter was accurate, yet the subtle pressure variations at low altitude, combined with the rolling terrain, created a deceptive sense of safety. A slight miscalculation in descent rate or delayed turn could, and did, bring the aircraft perilously close to terrain. The collision sequence unfolded in seconds. The aircraft struck the rising terrain, a calculated but tragic moment of controlled flight into terrain, CFIT. The impact was not dramatic from the outside. From within, the aircraft absorbed the forces with a resilience typical of the DC-3. Yet the loss of situational awareness, compounded by environmental limitations, proved fatal. In retrospect, the accident was a convergence of factors rather than a single error. The aircraft performed as designed, The crew acted competently, and the environment offered no warning. The event underscores the razor-thin margin between safe operation and disaster in the early post-war skies, a moment where technology, human judgment, and nature intersected with irreversible consequence. In the wake of VH-UXH's crash near Canberra, the focus shifted immediately to investigation. The aircraft had not failed mechanically. The engines, controls, and structural integrity were intact. The question was why a capable crew, piloting a reliable DC-3, had descended into terrain. The inquiry examined every variable: flight logs, weather reports, instrument calibration, and pilot experience. Investigators reconstructed the approach using surviving accounts and the aircraft's known capabilities. The conclusion pointed to a combination of low visibility, challenging terrain, and the limitations of the navigation aids of the time. Controlled flight into terrain, CFIT, was identified as a primary cause, an accident in which a fully functioning aircraft, under competent control, unintentionally flew into the ground. The human element was also considered. The pilots were experienced, yet post-war fatigue and operational pressures may have contributed to momentary lapses in situational awareness. Radio communication limitations compounded the difficulty, leaving them reliant on intermittent visual cues. Importantly, the investigation emphasized that there was no negligence, only the cruel alignment of environmental and procedural risk factors. The report prompted immediate reflection within Australian aviation authorities. Recommendations included enhanced training for instrument approaches, improvements in radio navigation systems, and stricter protocols for night and low visibility operations. The accident became a case study for post-war aviation safety, underscoring that even the most reliable aircraft demanded respect for environmental limits and procedural discipline. Beyond the technical findings, the crash left a lasting imprint on the aviation community. It reinforced the imperative that technology alone could not prevent accidents. The interaction of human skill, procedural rigor, and environmental awareness was paramount. The legacy of VH-UXH would inform operational standards and contribute to a culture of systematic risk mitigation that would shape Australian civil aviation for decades. The crash of VH-UXH left no survivors, yet it spoke volumes about the evolution of aviation safety. In a single flight, the fragile balance between human skill, mechanical reliability, and environmental unpredictability had been exposed. The tragedy became a lens through which post-war aviation practices were scrutinized, tested, and ultimately strengthened. Lessons from VH-UXH prompted changes that reverberated across Australian skies. Pilots received enhanced training for low-visibility approaches, with a renewed emphasis on instrument interpretation and cross-checking. Navigation systems were improved, radio procedures standardized, and approach charts refined to account for the complex terrain surrounding Canberra. The culture of aviation shifted subtly but profoundly. No longer was competence alone sufficient. Adherence to procedure and anticipation of environmental factors became central pillars of safe flight. Yet the legacy extends beyond technical change. The story of VH-UXH reminds the aviation community that each flight carries inherent risk, and that accidents often arise from the alignment of multiple small factors rather than a single catastrophic failure. Respect for the machine, the environment, and the human capacity for error became as critical as the aircraft itself. In the quiet aftermath, the hills around Canberra resumed their silence. The lessons learned, embedded in manuals, training programs, and regulations, would protect countless future flights. VH-UXH's final approach is no longer a cautionary tale of loss alone. It is a testament to the methodical pursuit of safety, a measured response to tragedy that elevated standards and saved lives. The skies that once claimed VH-UXH now carry a legacy of vigilance, diligence, and respect, a silent acknowledgement that every flight, every decision, and every instrument reading matters. The aircraft, the crew, and the environment are forever linked in history, guiding the principles that make modern aviation safer and more resilient.